Coming up, Indonesia's rainforests, wildlife, and deep blue seas make it one of the most biodiverse countries on the planet. One village in the southeast Sulawesi province cannot survive without the natural world, as captured by this Danish adventurer.
The Bajo village, and it is unlike anything I have ever seen before.
But the tribe's location make it extremely vulnerable to the weather.
That was because a tornado was heading our way.
The rush to upgrade infrastructure, with thousands of people online pitching in to protect this floating community.
So many days of planning, buying materials, double-checking everything.
Just 2 degrees is on. Now,
one of the things you said that really resonated with me was that this place and these people depend on the weather.
There's a Danish blogger based in Indonesia whose online content has been viewed by hundreds of thousands of people. Meet Kristian Hansen, a guy who's been showcasing the culture, cuisine, and people of Indonesia. So why is he relevant to our show? Well, on a recent episode, Kristian visited Sampella village and the Bajo Tribe, a community off the beaten track that's situated in the Banda Sea. There, he meets the most fascinating people who completely rely on the environment around them to survive. But before we get into that, Kristian talked about his life, his work, and how that led him to Indonesia.
What a fascinating life you have. I mean, I only came across your content maybe a few weeks ago before I first contacted you guys for this interview. I was looking at your video on the Bajo Tribe, Bajo Tribe,
Yep.
Bajo Tribe, and it was so good. I mean, I looked at that in one sitting, and I normally don't have time to do that, but it was really good how you just identified this place, how you travel there. One of the things you said that really resonated with me was that this place and these people depend on the weather, as in they just can't go on without knowing what is happening. They have to adjust their lives to it.
Just raining. There's not much to do. People are either sitting inside, maybe fixing an engine, or showering out in the rain. That's one of the things I really love about the village life. It's pretty much controlled by how the weather is.
Talk about your first impressions when you got there and saw this entire village basically living on stilts.
Yeah, so basically, just for a little bit of background information, I have been doing this project called From Sabang to Merauke for the last 3 years, and I'm trying to accomplish being the first person ever to do a solo journey and document it from the most western point of Indonesia to the most eastern point, because Indonesia is massive. It's the largest archipelago in the world with more than 18,000 islands. And it hasn't been documented like that before. So I had this idea to start the journey and started 3 years ago. And safe to say, I've done quite a lot of videos now about living with indigenous people in Indonesia. So I originally found this Bajo tribe because I was doing research and found out that actually Avatar 2, made by James Cameron, he got the inspiration for that world famous movie based on their culture of living on the ocean. So I made this plan to visit them and document their life. I was going to stay there for a week. And the first day I arrived in the afternoon, it was pouring rain. And it's almost like my first thought was like, this is like the Venice of Indonesia, because you arrive in a boat and you're just sailing past all these houses on stilts. And we had a quick talk with the family I was going to be staying with. And they said, you want a quick tour? Sure. Even though it was raining, we started walking around. And just as I took this first step out from that small homestay, I realized, okay, the paths that they are walking on to get in between these houses are either made from old bamboo or from extremely old and rotten wood that hasn't been replaced for more than 10 years. So it was proper dangerous to walk around. And I asked them, so
They
is
didn't
this
make it look
normal?
dangerous, too. The kids were running up and down. They were jumping off these wooden jetties. I don't know what to call them, these
Yeah.
pathways. Was it really dangerous for them? Were there instances in the past where people were hurt?
Yeah, so I mean that was my first question. I said, "Don't people usually fall here?" And they said, "Yeah, it's quite often that the neneks means the grandmothers in Indonesia, and the kids will fall. And keep in mind, there's like 3 meters down, and they said sometimes the kids they will scratch themselves on these rusty nails on the way down, and they might have to go
Whoa.
to the hospital to get stitches." And that's
And
when I
how
was like,
far away is the hospital?
"Sorry."
How far away is the hospital?
They
Well, a
actually
working one.
they have a small local hospital on that floating village, but it only opens if staffs come from the mainland
Wow.
to help them, and it wasn't open all the time I was there.
The tropical weather of scorching sun and heavy rainfall had taken its toll on these primitive paths. As it's the nearby houses' responsibility to change them, they haven't been so in the last 10 years.
Wow. All right,
Yeah.
so you arrived there, you noticed what needed to be done. Before we get into the amazing work you did for them, um, what was the first night like for you? I would imagine absolutely beautiful. It's very quiet. There's no pollution above. But you pointed out quite early on that the weather was very unpredictable. Had you even ever stayed overnight in a place that seemed so precarious? I mean, looking at the video, I felt as though any moment now a breeze can knock one of these houses off the stilts. Do you feel safe?
Yeah, so I mean, I've done this a lot. I have lived deep in the jungle. I have been on top of the mountains. I've lived in floating houses before as well. So I know that the weather it can actually be quite dangerous. And those first 4 or 5 days with the Bajo tribe, it was actually raining and we had big winds. So I was a little bit worried
Wow.
how this video would turn out. But actually, when we started doing the construction, actually a tornado passed by.
And just as everything was going so well, I noticed that the kids were waving at the ocean. That was because a tornado was heading our way. So we all took cover, fast. Besides our safety, I was now worrying what would happen to our project.
So yeah, I asked them, is this something that happens? And they told me, yeah, it's happened 4 or 5 times because the kids they were standing like this and calling in Indonesian saying, come on, big brother, come this way. We're not afraid, you know? I'm like, "Wow."
The tornado luckily passed, and everyone got back to work.
Are they aware of climate change? Are they cognizant of what's happening outside of the village?
Yeah, they are, but they don't, I mean, they don't worry too much about the weather the same way that we do. I mean, for them, they are like one with the ocean.
Even when it's pouring, the kids are still outside playing, sailing in a plastic bucket, or using a piece of styrofoam as a boogie board. The ocean is their playground. And there is no need to worry, because they swim as well as the fish beneath them.
They absolutely love the ocean because the Bajo people actually originally came from the Philippines and they are nomadic seafarers. So previously, the Bajo people would only live on wooden boats. They would never go on land. So they would always sail around, and basically their life was about just looking for fish so they could have the next meal. But the Indonesian government, they helped them out in the 60s to make this village in an effort to try and domesticate them a little bit. But they are more aware in terms of the environment, how it impacts the amount of fish, because it is not the same today as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Each year, they have to travel further and further away to find the fish. A big problem for the future as no fish means no money to buy rice.
Yeah, you pointed that out, that fish seems to be scarce, except when there are moments when the tide is out and they have this fish bonanza happening.
Mm.
What is the reason they come up with as to why fish figures are declining?
So, I mean, in Indonesian news, it's sometimes it can be portrayed as because the Bajo are overfishing.
Oh.
But in that village, I mean, there's 2,180 people living there. But I have seen how industrial fishing operations work other places in Indonesia. And the amount of fish that they catch in that little village, it is a drop in the bucket compared to industrialized fishing, you know?
And now Papa, he has actually cooked the big fish that we caught. So yeah, we're gonna have it now for lunch. We asked if he wanted to sell it, and his comment was, yeah, sometimes you have to enjoy it as well. So that's what we're gonna do now.
They are aware that the population is decreasing, but for them it's hard to do anything about it except that they just have each year to travel further and further away to find the fish.
Wow. Talk about how they get power. Where does the electricity come from? Do they
So
have
they
electricity?
Yeah, so it only happened recently. I believe it was like within the last 5 to 7 years that they were able to pull a cable from mainland underneath the water to the village. But previously, they would only rely on gensets, and that is extremely expensive because you gotta pay roughly $1 per liter gasoline there, and that's quite a lot for them. Maybe you need 10, 15 liters to a genset per night to have it running a full night. So it's helped them a lot having proper electricity now. But previously, yeah, they didn't have any.
Yeah. Let's talk about rising sea levels. It seems to be an issue that's been talked about a lot more, particularly for not just islands in the Caribbean or the Pacific Islands, but also for major cities that lie on coasts.
Yeah.
Is it visible in Sampela village?
The Sampela village, not that I would have noticed, and they did not mention it. But you can take the instance of, for example, Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, which is actually being relocated now to Kalimantan in Borneo because Jakarta is actually sinking, both because of rising sea levels, but also because for so many years we've been taking water from below the ground.
So you get there, you spend a few days, and you decided that these people require help. Talk a bit about what you've done for them so far, because I know since you made that video, it's been maybe 2 or 3 months. So what's happened since then?
So actually, when I first arrived there, my plan was not to make a video about that at all. I simply had the idea that afternoon when we walked to the bridges, and that first night, I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking there has to be something that we can do to help. And that's why, within a matter of 30 minutes, I had written a quick post, threw it on my social media, and I thought maybe we can collect $1,000, $2,000, who knows. But what happened then is within 2.5 days, we collected nearly, how much did we collect? We first collected around $10,000 within the first 2 days. And then after the upload, we have actually collected an additional $12,000 that we then spent. Apa namanya? Sorry, sometimes changing between Indonesian, English, Danish. To fix their mosque because they have a small mosque there, but it's not big enough come Ramadan, and it was in really poor condition. So we had enough to fix that as well. It is currently in the process of being fixed. The bridges, we fixed that before I left. We actually spent 2.5 days collecting the funds. We spent 3, 4 days then buying materials, and we spent 1 day remaking the bridges because all of the village came together in a cultural phenomenon called gotong royong, which basically means helping each other, something that lies deep in Indonesian culture.
And as the rumors had started to spread about our project, many had showed up to help.
You had a really emotional moment, at least for me, I'm sure for other people looking at it, where I think a day or two before you left, there was one home that was somewhat separated from the rest of the village. At least it seemed that way because of how television looks. It looks like a massive space. There was no roof there.
For the last 8 days now, I've been waking up every morning, coming out, looking over the ocean, and seeing this small house next to me. And this house, they don't really have a lot. First of all, they don't have a bridge. So every time they need to go somewhere, they need to get into the boat. This family also has 5 kids. 4 of the kids are still living in the house, and it is quite expensive having 4 kids. And that means that they don't even have a full roof on the house. They only have half. So yesterday I asked my mother in Denmark, her husband, my father in Denmark, and his wife if maybe they were interested in helping a little bit, because we already spent all the money on the bridge, and they said yes. So yesterday afternoon, Duda and his family, they helped me buy a new roof, and this morning we broke the news to Pa Latali, and he was so grateful.
What was that like for you? Like just changing people's, just a family of like, I think 4 or 5 of them, parents and like 3 or 4 kids, all living in one big room. What was like that? What was that like for you?
So actually, they were my neighbors, and they were probably maybe 20, 30 meters from my homestay over to their house. So every morning when I woke up, I would wave to the kids. They would be up early getting ready for school, and I could see that they only had roof on half of their house, which was already in really poor condition. And when we had finished the bridge building project, we actually didn't have any more funds, but I kept being reminded of this family that once it rained, they would get wet even when sleeping. And in a small space, not bigger than maybe 4 times 5 meters, they would sleep 2 adults and 4 kids. So I actually called on my parents in Denmark to send some extra funds so we could buy a roof for this family, because this was probably what made like the biggest emotional impact on me, because you could just see that they were fighting, but Indonesian culture, it's also very much not about complaining but being grateful for what you have.
Wow.
So they were complaining about it, but you could see how much it meant to them once we started that they were so grateful. Sometimes it's difficult for me to realize how big a difference I sometimes make in these videos until I get back, because once I'm there, I'm just trying to do my best to make everything happen. But then once I came back and I was actually editing this video, I was proper crying when I edited that sequence, because then I realized how big of a difference we had made for that family.
The Songroyon project had been a success, because more than 300 kind souls from various parts of the world had helped this small Indonesian village raise 75 million rupiah in 3 days. It was time to say goodbye to Sampela. But before leaving, I made a small visit to Pa Latali and his family, who had now finished installing the new roof, and they had received the bamboo for the new floor.
Yeah, I mean, these kids will remember you for the rest of their lives. I'm not even sure anyone can comprehend exactly how much of a difference you've made in their lives, whether you know this or not. But just looking at the floor of this place they were living in, I'm like, how do they not fall every day through this? These huge spaces in the floor of their house. Amazing. It's just amazing. And you were able to completely cover this up with bamboo, weren't you?
Yeah, and you know what? So the original idea was just to fix the roof, but it wasn't until I went over there myself and I took the first step into their little house that my right foot went through the floor, because the floor was made from bamboo, and cut up bamboo will only last for about a year in those conditions. And then I asked, guys, we gotta fix the floor as well. How much does it cost? Knowing that we didn't have any more funds. And they said, yeah, so one bamboo, yeah, we're probably gonna need five big bamboos. And I was like, okay, how much is one bamboo? And in dollars, so one bamboo was like $1.50. So set us back around, yeah, $6-7 to redo the entire floor of that house.
$6. That's it. Wow. Um, I'm curious as to whether you got any criticism for this. And I'll tell you why. You've
Mm.
gone in there and you've literally fixed up an entire, well, some of the village in a short space of time, something that honestly the government should be responsible for. Um, what kind of feedback did you get from the government? Maybe was there anyone who expressed frustration over this action you did, whether it's against you or the government itself?
So actually, my video it went super viral 2 times. The first time it went viral, it was because the story was really good and because it was for a good purpose, right? And the second time it went viral, that was because the head of the village, he actually went on an interview and said that he was very disappointed in me and said that I had not asked for permission to do this. Um, because I think maybe he was a little bit, maybe he will have gotten some pushback as well from the people above him saying, hey, this is not making us look that good. Um, and then it went viral a second time because people actually knew in my video that I asked for permission twice, which was documented. So now it went viral again because people were like supporting me again and protecting me. So yeah, it was okay. I mean, it's a
Interesting.
little bit sensitive topic because I love Indonesia and I would really not say anything bad about the Indonesian government. But all I can say is, out of millions of people, only a very few got upset with this, and I can definitely live with that.
Yeah, I can see both sides of this. It was pretty much an embarrassment for the government. So obviously, this is not the only place you've been to in Indonesia. You've been to other tribes as well. Do you see the effects of global warming in general across the country as you visit these places?
Yeah. So in Indonesia, we have a dry season and a rainy season, right? And
Monsoon.
yeah, exactly. And going just back maybe 5-7 years ago, you could actually depend on when it would be the dry season and when it would be the rainy season, as we call it. But within the last 2 years of my trip, it's impossible to count on anymore. Even the locals I meet in the various places, they say, yeah, it's supposed to be rainy season now, but it's dry. And then it was dry, it's actually raining a lot. So I get a lot of messages of people asking me, Chris, when is the best time to visit Indonesia in terms of the weather? And now I'm simply saying, just come because you cannot predict the weather anyway. It's
Wow.
simply impossible.
How long do you plan on staying there?
So I mean, I moved here 4 years ago. Originally came on an expat contract right before the pandemic, and during the pandemic, I had this idea to start my own project. So I resigned, and yeah, 2.5 years ago, I started this project, which originally I thought would take a year, but now, nearly 3 years in, I think I still have another 4 years before I arrive in Papua. And I love it here. I have my own company, and I'm hoping that I can stay here the rest of my life.
Well, that's the show. I'll leave you with these images and the adventures that seems to be making Kristian a YouTube sensation.
Since the colors came to stay, till somebody call my